You are listening to the Place We Find Ourselves podcast. I'm Adam Young, and today I am going to explain everything I know about implicit memory, at least the key essence of it. Why? Why? Because implicit memory, in so many ways, is running your life. So let's begin by defining memory in general, and then I'll talk about the two layers of memory, which are explicit memory and implicit memory. But first, what is memory? Memory is the way in which a past experience affects how your mind will function in the present, like this afternoon. Let me say that again. Memory is the way in which past experiences affect how your mind will function in the present. That's the definition given by neuroscientist Dan Siegel, and I have found that definition of memory to be accurate, practical, and extremely helpful. The reason it's so important to understand memory is because memory is not primarily about the past. Memory is about your present. Like, by present, I mean how you are going to experience life later today. Here's the point: your memory influences your present day to day life in very profound ways. It does more, frankly, than influence it. Memory shapes your present day to day life deeply. So, point number one for today is simply this: if memory is the way in which past experiences affect how your mind will function later today, wouldn't it be wise to know as much as possible about your past experiences? Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, there are two layers of memory. There is this thing called implicit memory, and then there is the second layer of memory, which is called explicit memory. And when most people hear the word memory, most people think about what is called explicit memory. If I asked you to think who your first grade teacher was, you would use explicit memory to access that information. If I asked you, what is 7 times 9? You would use explicit memory to answer that question. Explicit memory is very important, but implicit memory is vastly more important when it comes to how we actually live our lives, particularly our relational lives. The ability to create explicit memories does not develop until about 24 months of age. However, implicit memory is operational before you come out of the womb. Everything you learn in the first 2 years of your life is recorded in implicit, not explicit memory. Now, here's the thing about these two layers of memory. To record something in explicit memory, like who your first grade teacher was, to record something in explicit memory, you have to be paying attention. You have to be paying attention to record anything in explicit memory. So, for example, if you want to remember that the capital of New York is Albany, the state capital of New York is Albany, you have to be paying attention when you are studying your state capitals. However, and this is oh so very important, implicit memories are created whether you are paying attention or not. Implicit memories are recorded automatically without your awareness, without you paying attention. You don't think to yourself, I need to remember this. Like when you're studying your state capitals, you're like, I need to remember Albany, New York, Albany, New York. Okay, look, when it comes to implicit memory, you just remember the data automatically without thinking about it and without realizing that you are recording anything in implicit memory at all. This is very important. Why? Well, for the first 24 months of your life, when you were completely dependent on your parents for everything, every single experience you had was recorded in implicit memory. The brain is not able to even lay down explicit memories until around 24 months of age, which is why you don't quote unquote remember anything from when you were an infant. Now, I'm putting remember in quotations because why? Because far from not remembering anything from your first 2 years of life, you actually remember everything without trying to. It's just that your experiences in those first 2 years of life are recorded in implicit, not explicit memory. The next critical thing, and this is oh so very important to know about implicit memory, the next critical thing to know about implicit memory is that when you recall an implicit memory later today, you don't experience the sensation that you are remembering something. Let me say that again. When you recall an implicit memory later this afternoon, you do not experience the sensation that you are remembering anything. It is hard to overstate the importance of this fact. If I asked you who was your first grade teacher, you would think back and you'd try to remember, okay, who taught me in first grade? Who was that? You'd try to remember his or her face, her name. Now, as you thought back to first grade, you would have a sensation in your body which tells you, I'm thinking back in time and I'm trying to remember something. This sensation in your body is called the sensation of recall. The sensation of recall. This sensation always accompanies the retrieval of an explicit memory, like remembering who your first grade teacher was. However, when you retrieve an implicit memory, there is no sensation of recall. You don't have that internal bodily sensation that you are remembering something. In other words, when you remember an implicit memory, you are not aware that you are remembering something from the past. It feels present. Now, I'm just going to pause for a minute and let that sink in. When you remember an implicit memory, you are not aware that you are remembering something from the past. Why? Because when you remember something that is recorded in implicit memory, there is no sensation of recall. You do not have that bodily sensation that says, I'm thinking back in time and I'm remembering something. That doesn't happen with implicit memory. So let me share an example to illustrate this. Suppose you and your friend are walking in the park and suddenly, out of nowhere, a cocker spaniel starts racing towards you. Immediately, your body floods with fear. However, you have no sense of, oh, this is because I'm remembering that I was attacked by a dog when I was 5 years old. Yet that implicit memory is precisely what is causing your body to feel fear. Your friend, who had a very friendly dog growing up, has a very different reaction. Without feeling any fear at all, your friend bends down on one knee, opens her arms to hug the incoming Cocker Spaniel. Now, why do the two of you have such different reactions to the exact same event? Implicit memory. Implicit memory is the reason you have a very different reaction from your friend. Her implicit memory informed her that dogs are friendly and fun, while yours informed you that they are dangerous and frightening. Neuroscientist Dan Siegel puts it like this. He says, the brain is an anticipation machine that shapes ongoing perception by what it automatically expects based on prior experience. One reason that your past story matters so much is because your brain will experience whatever happens this afternoon through the lens of your past story. Why? Because the job of your brain is to anticipate what's about to happen next. That's your brain's job, at least one of its jobs. And how does your brain anticipate what's about to happen next? By assuming that what has happened before in your life is what will happen again in a few moments. Again, here's how Dan Siegel explains your brain. The brain is an anticipation machine that shapes ongoing perception by what it automatically expects based on prior experience. Okay, here's another illustration to help you understand the power of implicit memory. If you were an art history major in college, you will know the difference between a Monet and a Van Gogh. If presented with two paintings that you had never seen, one a Monet and one a Van Gogh, you would immediately be able to tell which was which. Now, here's the question. How could you possibly know that a particular painting was a Van Gogh if you had never seen that painting before? Implicit memory is how you know. As you look at both paintings, you unconsciously and automatically remember all the Van Gogh paintings you have ever seen over the course of your life. And these implicit memories tell you what a Van Gogh feels like. Implicit memory is about the feel of things. Now, here's why implicit memory matters for your life, like right now, like today. Suppose that for the first 18 years of your life, every painting you saw was painted by Vincent van Gogh. You never saw any abstract paintings or realist paintings or modernist paintings. All you saw was Van Gogh. As an 18-year-old, you would not think this is what Van Gogh looks like, but rather this is what paintings look like. And this is precisely what happens with your understanding of relationships and your expectations for relationships. Your brain summarizes all your experiences of relating with your mother. And instead of thinking, this is what a relationship with mom is like, you think, this is what relationships are like. Let me share a client story to make this practical. And I've made this story up. James burst into tears midway through our couples counseling session. His wife, Trisha, had just expressed how angry she was because James was really anxious over the weekend, and his anxiety prevented him from being present with Trisha and the kids. And after Trisha expressed her anger at James, I asked James, what did it feel like for you to hear your wife's anger just now? What did that feel like? And James replied, I felt emasculated and humiliated. I felt like a boy instead of a man. So I asked James, okay, where did you feel that sense of emasculation and humiliation? Like in your body, where do you feel it? He located it in his chest and his gut. And then I said, just notice that sensation of emasculation and humiliation that's in your chest and your gut. Just notice it. So he noticed it for a moment. And then I said, now think back on your life. Have you ever felt that feeling before? James immediately began crying and he said, yes, yes. And here's what came out of his mouth. When I was 12, I was on the phone with my dad. We had just moved from California to Texas, but my dad had to stay back in California for 3 months. I was the oldest of three kids, and I was supposed to be helping my mom hold everything together while my dad was still in California working. But I was so upset, James said, about moving away from my friends, and I felt incredibly anxious in our new neighborhood where I didn't know anyone. And instead of taking care of my mom and sisters like I was supposed to, I would sit in my room filled with anxiety and dread. And my dad said to me over the phone, James, you are supposed to be the man of the house right now. You're supposed to be taking care of your mom and sisters. And instead, you're alone in your room, nursing your stupid feelings. And then my dad just hung up the phone. I sat there feeling humiliated and emasculated. I so wanted to be able to do what my dad asked, but I couldn't. That's the story that James recounted. Now, let's just look at how James's implicit memory from the past is influencing his present relationship with his wife in my office. James's wife Trisha is angry. Why? Because James's anxiety kept him from being present with her and the kids. And when Trisha expressed her anger about this, when she told James specifically why she was angry with him, James immediately began having a very painful reaction in his body. He felt the bodily sensations associated with emasculation and humiliation. Now, the question is why? Why? Because our past experiences, stored in implicit memory, intrude in the present and activate bodily sensations in the present. In this case, James remembered the time when his father angrily shamed him for being sidelined in his room, quote unquote, nursing his stupid feelings instead of taking care of his mother and sisters. However, because this experience of James was stored in implicit memory rather than explicit memory, James had no sensation of recall as he was sitting in my office. He had no idea that he was remembering something. And as a result, he had no idea why he was so upset by Trisha's anger. It's important to understand that as Trisha expresses anger at James for not being able to overcome his anxiety, James feels very similar feelings in the present to what he felt that day in his bedroom as a 12-year-old. And this is because his brain is remembering something. But since the emotions and the bodily sensations he experienced as a 12-year-old are recorded in implicit memory, James has no sensation of recall. Therefore, James has no idea that he is remembering anything at all. This leads to profound confusion about why he feels emasculated when his wife expresses anger at him for being debilitated with anxiety. When we leave, here's the point, when we leave home and we set out into the world, we carry within us a storehouse of implicit memories. And those implicit memories tell us what to expect around every bend. Here's again neuroscientist Dan Siegel. Here's how he puts it. Implicit memories, he says, cause us to form expectations about the way the world works based on our previous experiences. Implicit memory creates something called priming, in which the brain readies itself to respond in a certain way. Okay, that's Dan Siegel. If you want to understand why you react the way you do, you need to understand this thing called priming. Priming is a term that refers to the brain's tendency to assume that the world works today just like it did in my past. Implicit memory causes each of us to form expectations about the way the world works based on our previous experiences. In other words, your brain has been primed to react in particular ways. And it has been primed to react in particular ways based on your past experiences in life. Now, I want to end today's episode by talking about so-called overreactions. Overreactions. Do you ever feel intense emotion that you know is like more than the situation in the present calls for? Perhaps you think of these experiences as overreactions. For example, someone asks you a seemingly innocuous question, and suddenly you feel enraged or you feel panicked, or you feel deep shame. What if these intense emotional reactions that we all experience, what if they're not overreactions at all? What if they are directly proportional to how your brain receives the other person's communication and interprets their words, their tone of voice through the grid of your implicit memory? Something in the other person's tone of voice or their facial expression or their choice of words has called to mind memories of deeply significant past experiences that were marked by a similar tone of voice or a similar facial expression or a similar sequence of words. And you are remembering those experiences. But because those experiences are stored in implicit memory, you're not aware that you're remembering anything at all. It's not that, look, it's not that you are too sensitive. It's not that you're a drama queen. You simply have a brain that is working properly, which is to say, you have a brain with a treasure trove of implicit memories. Situations that evoke strong emotional reactions in us make implicit memory known. To say it differently, situations that evoke strong emotional reactions in you tell you something about your story. Yes, there is a reason you feel the deep feelings that you do. There is a reason you fly off the handle when you do. There is a reason that your heart starts to race in the middle of certain conversations, fights, arguments. And those reasons will be found buried, not so deeply, in your stories. Okay, summary. 4 key points from today. Let me just summarize. Number one, memory is the way in which a past experience affects how your mind will function this afternoon. Number two, implicit memories are created without you paying attention. In other words, when you were a child, when you were recording tons of information about your environment, you were doing that without trying to. It just happened because that's how the brain works. Number three, when you recall something today that is stored in implicit memory, you do not have the sensation of recall. You don't have that sense in your body of, okay, I'm thinking back in time and I'm remembering something. And number four, when we leave home and set out into the world, we carry within us a storehouse of implicit memories. And those implicit memories tell us what to expect around every bend. Your brain has been primed to expect the present to be just like the past. That's because you have neurons, and that's how neurons operate. All right. Oh, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And please hear these words as we end. May you, please, for the love, may you have a posture of kindness towards your heart and body when you have big reactions, knowing knowing that these reactions are not overreactions. Big reactions are simply your brain's way of making your implicit memories known to you. In other words, your big reactions are your brain's way of giving you more clues about your story. So, kindness, kindness, kindness to your very good brain and your very good body.